Please make your way to a seat. Please find a seat. I'm Angela Harkness, Westford's town moderator. Thanks to all of you who've made the time to attend this important meeting. And a brief thank you to our town staff who've arranged things here at the meeting. It's a tremendous effort to put one of these together, and in my experience, the staff gives 100% to that endeavor. Also, thanks to WestfordCAT for setting up the audio visual so that we can accommodate a larger meeting, and for their excellent coverage of this event and all things Westford. It's my job to ensure a fair and efficient running of this meeting, and I'll start by explaining how the meeting will proceed and what we need to accomplish tonight. You, the voters, are town meeting, which is the legislative body of Westford. Town meeting passes our local laws and decides how to spend our money. We do this by discussing and voting on each article in the town meeting warrant. Next slide, Steve. Anyone registered to vote in Westford can participate in town meeting. Non-voters may attend, but they must sit in designated areas. They cannot vote and may only speak on the issues if they're given specific permission by this meeting. If there are any non-voters in the room, please come up to the front. We have a separate room designated for you. Next slide. The warrant is a list of articles we'll discuss, and it's published well in advance of the meeting. It's our agenda for this evening. Each article in the warrant asks the voters a yes or no question. As each article comes up, I'll summarize the motion proposed as a possible answer, which the meeting will eventually vote on, either to accept it or reject it. Once a motion is seconded, discussion begins, and when discussion ends, we vote. The full text of all motions and the recommendations of the relevant boards will be shown on the screen and is also available in the blue motions book available at the back of the room. Any voter may propose an amendment, changing a motion during the course of debate. Simple amendments can be made verbally. All other amendments must be presented in writing after being stated at the microphone. An amendment must be within the scope of the original warrant article. Next slide. If you wish to speak or ask a question, approach the microphone and wait to be recognized by me, or if we do end up using any of the other rooms, by the assistant moderator in your room. You can only speak from the microphones. Please do not call out from your seat or anywhere else on the floor. You must state your full name and full address when you approach the microphone. Speak only to the motion being discussed, and don't repeat points already made. Please bring your clicker with you to the microphone, and you can hold it up before you speak. If you've already spoken, please let others who may have not spoken speak first. Presenters explaining motions to the meeting have up to 6 minutes to make their case. Speakers from the floor have up to 2 minutes to comment or ask questions. You should state all of your points and ask all of your questions before responses are solicited. There's no dialogue between speakers, and there should be no personal references or attacks on individuals. I can't force you to be polite, but in my experience, rude or disrespectful speech often has the unintended effect of causing the voters to disregard the opinion of the speaker. If you wish to end debate and call for a vote, after being recognized, you should simply say, "I wish to move the question," or something similar. Such a motion is not debatable. It has to be voted on right away, and it requires a 2/3 vote for approval. As moderator, if I think terminating debate will limit informed consideration of the topic or comes before sufficient discussion has taken place, I may rule that request to be out of order. You may not address the meeting and then finish your comments with a motion to end discussion by moving the question. A motion to move the question must be the only thing a speaker says on that trip to the microphone. I will not accept a motion to reconsider anything that has gone to a final vote unless the motion to reconsider is based on a clear technical or procedural error. Next slide. Votes will be counted using your clickers, and I'll announce the results once they're in. During voting and while votes are being tabulated, please remain seated to ensure the accuracy of the vote. A few informational items. We do have our meeting mentor at the red flag. If you'd like to ask a procedural question and don't want to approach the microphone, Lynn, could you stand, please? You could approach our mentor and she'll help you out. Next slide, please. When you checked in, you were given a voting clicker like this one. If you're a registered voter and you don't have a clicker, please return to the teller's desk and they'll sort you out. Your clicker will only work in this room, if this is the room to which you've been assigned, which everybody's been assigned to this room. If you're confused about what room you should be in, please look at the slide for instructions. However, I believe all the voters that have, Lori, is that right? All the voters are in this room, yeah. Correct? Okay, so everybody's in this room. Keep your clicker with you at all times while at the meeting. Do not give your clicker to anyone else to hold, and do not agree to hold anyone else's clicker for them. On leaving the meeting, turn in your clicker at the return boxes by the door of each voting room. Many of these clickers are borrowed from other communities, so it's particularly important that they all be returned when you leave the meeting. Once you return your clicker, it will not be reissued to you for any reason, so you should only return it if you're leaving for the night. If you find tomorrow that you've accidentally taken a clicker home with you, just return it to the town clerk's office as soon as you can after the meeting. To vote using your clicker, you're going to wait until I say voting is now open. Once voting is open, you can press either the green 1A button or the red 2B button for yes and no respectively, and look for the OK in your LED screen. None of the other buttons on your clicker do anything. They don't work at all. If you wish to change your vote at any point in time, just press the other button and the system will record your new vote. This option is available as long as voting remains open. Once I say voting is closed, your vote is permanently registered and you may no longer change it. Your clicker will only register the last vote you send for each motion, so there's no way to vote twice. Before we start, first of all, even though we don't have voters in the other room, I'd like to thank the people who volunteered to be assistant moderators in those rooms. And those people are Paul Alphin, moderator emeritus, Ellen Hardy, and Chris Sanders. So thank you very much to them. Okay, we'll be working from the blue town meetings motions booklet. The motions booklet lists the full texts of the motions we'll be discussing, which will also be displayed on this screen. In order to allow me to summarize each motion, instead of reading every word to you aloud, may I have a motion to accept the wording as it's printed in the motions booklet for each article? Is there a second? Okay, we're going to vote using our clickers. So when I say the voting is open, you can press the green 1A button for yes or the red 2B button for no. Voting is now open. If you want to accept the motions language as in the book and on the screen, you would press the green 1A button. If you do not want to do that, you press the red 2B button. Okay, voting is now closed. The motion passes 542 yes, 45 no. Secondly, As stated previously, non-voters may not address the meeting without your permission. I'll ask now that town meeting allows speaking participation by town employees and town-hired consultants like town council or our town manager, who will be participating in our discussion by virtue of their positions. May I have a motion to allow those individuals to address the meeting? Is there a second? This requires a 2/3 majority to pass. When I say voting is open, you can press whichever button you want to vote with. Voting is now open. If you want to vote yes, please press the green 1A button, and vote no, press the red 2B button. Voting is now closed. The motion passes by a 2/3 majority, 499 to 91. Okay. Finally, I want to emphasize that every question is welcome. Feel free to ask about the facts of any article or the particulars of any process we're following. If you have a question about something, others probably do as well. And with that, please turn to page 3 of your blue motions booklet, and we'll begin with the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of Articles 6, 7, 8, and 9. These articles are routine in nature and generally non-controversial. To save time, we can vote on them all at once instead of voting on each article separately. However, if anyone has a question or a concern about any of these articles, I'll pull that item out of the consent agenda and come back to it later to answer your question or hear your comment. So, as I read through the consent agenda items, please stand and say "hold" loudly from your seat if you have a question or concern with any particular item. I'll now read through a brief description of the 4 proposed consent agenda articles. Remember, stand and say "hold" to any item for which you would like further discussion. Article 6 is to remove the requirement for newspaper publication of bylaws after they have been accepted by town meeting. Article 7 is to eliminate our old transient merchant bylaw, since we passed a new transient merchant bylaw at our last town meeting. Article 8 provides for the acceptance of Cloverleaf Lane as a public way. Article 9 allows the Select Board to accept a gift of 2 parcels of land off Howard Road and 1 parcel off Kersey Circle. All right. We have a hold on Article 9, so we'll do Articles 6, 7, and 8. Is there a, can I have a motion to approve Articles 6, 7, and 8 as a consent agenda? Is there a second? All right. All in favor, press your green 1A button. All opposed? Oh, sorry. Wait, voting's not open yet. All right. Voting is now open. All in favor, press your green 1A button. Opposed, press your red 2B button. Looks like it. Wait. Oh, of course. All right. Voting is now closed. The article passes. The vote is 562 to 42. Can I have the question for Article 9?
Denali Delmar, 8 Dunstable Road. I'm just curious about what the condition of these parcels are and why they're being donated.
So this is Article 9. Jeff Morissette, Assistant Town Manager for Land Use Planning, or something like that.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So these 3 parcels of land are currently vacant. There is a company, the Aubrey D. Acker Inc. Company, holds these 3 parcels of land. The owners of that company are looking to dissolve that corporation at this time. They have multiple parcels of land in Westford at this time. And so 3 of those 4 parcels of land they thought might have some strategic value to the community. In some way or another, they would provide some form of access to land already owned by the town, either through its Conservation Commission or the Board of Selectmen. It could give some access to some landlocked property right now. And the actual, one of the most important features is that it could serve to either continue to allow some land to be used for trail purposes or could provide further connectivity to existing and other trail systems.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, sir.
Have they been assessed for hazardous
I'm sorry.
substances?
I'm sorry. You'll have to speak a little closer to the microphone so we can hear you.
James Shuley, 19 Flushing Pond Road. Just curious to make sure they've been assessed for hazardous substances. Did you say it was an Inc. company?
That's correct. To my knowledge, these have simply been vacant parcels of land. Should town meeting move forward and ask the select board or authorize the select board to acquire these by gift, we would go through the customary process of reviewing these properties. And if for any reason the select board did not feel comfortable acquiring them, they would not be bound to do so. But we did not go through those measures or process until we first got a read of town meeting to see if they were open to that.
Thank you.
Yes.
At the center microphone.
Yes, my question is, has anybody given any consideration to those parcels of land being sold, public auction to raise funds for whatever shortfall the town has in its collection of taxes or its needs to run the town?
So I'm not sure that that question is within the scope because what we're talking about here is whether or not the select board can accept a gift. And I think what you're talking about would be something that might be done after the select board accepts the gift, but we couldn't consider that because the town doesn't own them yet.
Well, my concern is that there always seems to be somewhat of a shortfall in the budget. And if those parcels should come to the town, but I think it should be considered, at least discussed, that those parcels could be put up for sale to help any shortfall in the tax revenue that the town's looking for most of the time. So I just wanted to make my point. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, Lynn.
Lynn Cohen, Fletcher Road. Would you please remind voters that they should give their name and address before they address the meeting?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. All right, seeing no further questions, let's take the vote. We'll have to get a motion for Article 9 separately. Can I have a motion to allow the select board to accept the gift of 2 parcels of land off Howard Road and 1 parcel off Kersey Circle? Is there a second? All right, all in favor, press your green 1A button. Oh, sorry. Is it open? Okay, voting is open. All in favor, press your green 1A button. All opposed, press your red 2B button. Voting is closed. The article passes 575 yes to 51 no. All right, we are now at Article 1. Thank you for your patience with that. Under Article 1, I have a motion to amend the zoning bylaw to define and regulate firearm businesses and related terms as follows. That the town vote to amend Appendix A, Table of Principal Use Regulations, and Section 10.2, General Definitions of the Zoning Bylaw, and to create a new Section 6.6 of the zoning bylaw to regulate by special permit the location, siting, design, placement, security, safety, monitoring, and other requirements for firearm businesses in the town of Westford, and to enumerate criteria for the establishment of firearm businesses in town, to address public safety concerns arising from the use of land, buildings, and structures for the operation of such businesses, and the potential disruption of peace and quiet enjoyment of the community and related changes as shown on the handout titled Article 1, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Firearm Business Bylaw. Is there a second to the motion? Assistant Town Manager Jeff Morissette to explain the details.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening. Article 1 proposes to amend the zoning bylaw to define and regulate firearm businesses separately from other uses. If approved, the following types of uses would be considered a firearm business: the purchase or sale of firearms, the purchase or sale of ammunition, the purchase or sale of firearm accessories, or the performing of gunsmithing services. This proposal would limit firearm businesses to the commercial highway and industrial highway zoning districts, or the CH and IH districts, which are generally located along Littleton Road, some portions, westerly portions of Powers Road and Liberty Way. It would require a special permit to establish a firearm business and would designate the planning board as the special permit granting authority. It would actively involve the police department as part of the planning board review process and require applicants to submit site-specific security plans for review by the police department. It would require a 500-foot separation distance between firearm businesses and require a 1,000-foot buffer between firearm businesses and schools. And currently, the Neshoba Valley Technical High School is the only school that would have a buffer that would affect the CH or IH zoning districts. As compared to the October 2023 zoning initiative to regulate firearm businesses, this version differs in the following ways. Firing ranges are not included in the definition of firearm businesses. There are no buffer requirements to childcare centers, religious uses, or to locations where children commonly congregate in structured, scheduled activities. And there are no limitations on the number of special permits that could be granted for firearm businesses. The planning board held a public hearing to consider this proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and on June 17, 2024, voted 5-0-0 to recommend this amendment to town meeting. Their written report and recommendation is included in the handout, the yellow handout. And also on October 8, 2024, the select board voted 5-0-0 to recommend this article to town meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Mike Bonifant, Chair of the Planning Board, to give us their report as required by law.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As stated by Mr. Morissette, Planning Board on October 1st, 2024, opened a public hearing. We held 4 additional public hearings and voted 5-0 on June 3rd to adopt the zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Chief Mark Chambers, give the police perspective.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a beautiful October night and we're stuck inside. So one of the reasons why we started this discussion about 2 years ago is we had the first firearms business application come into town, which the police department did become involved in. And come to find out, the only way for us to be legally or binding as part of the security process for the original application is through special permit. And one of the other things that we did realize is that As Littleton went through their issues with the gun mill that's over there now, one of the things that we were looking for was to have an initial separation between firearms businesses. Again, the only way for us to be able to accomplish that is through special permit. I think that it's important for any firearms business that comes into this town to have interaction with the police department. We want to make sure that their security plan includes enough quantity and quality of either devices or cameras and whatnot, just to make sure that their plan is safe. The 500-foot buffer is being requested because we don't want to have another mill situation like they had in Littleton. There was unethical business practices being practiced by some of the firearms businesses over there, which is well documented through several different articles covered by the Boston Globe. So the thought would be, by providing a buffer between those businesses, it makes it more difficult for those unethical practices to take place. And it should dissuade the casual buyer from trying to skirt the Massachusetts approved firearms roster. So with those were the two major concerns of the police department when it came to the impact of public safety. Those are both included in this proposed bylaw, and we do support it.
Thank you. And Chair of the Select Board, Scott Hazelton, to give their report.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As Jeff alluded to, the Select Board voted to recommend or support the article 5-0.
Thank you. Let's move to the discussion. Are there any questions or comments? At the microphone to my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Al Prescott.
Before you start out, I
Yes.
just want to tell everybody, please make sure that you give your full name and address before you speak. Thank you.
Al Prescott, 16 Lakeshore Drive North. Good evening, Madam Moderator.
Good evening.
Madam Moderator, it's been about a year since we discussed the firearms zoning bylaw, and since then, as everybody knows, dozens of firearms businesses have moved into town, crime is running rampant, and nobody can walk the streets for fear of, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, that didn't happen. That was what we were told was going to happen. Let's get to the real issue here. Last year at this time, I sat there and told this body that we were going to have a major problem funding our schools, police, and fire, and that did come. And the voters said, we don't want to pay the extra tax rates. When that happens, what do? You expand your tax base so you can tax it. And what do? Rather than roll out the red carpet to lawful businesses that have an awful lot of inventory that can be taxed at the town tax rate, we pull the drawbridge up. Westford has the highest commercial vacancy rate along the entire 110 corridor. That's one of the major reasons why we're having trouble funding our schools, police, and fire departments. And it drives me and many of my fellow citizens here bonkers that our tax dollars are being used to justify not getting more tax dollars. Madam Moderator, the last thing that really drives me crazy is we've been going through this process now for over a year. I have sat there in meetings with various town boards who just don't seem to understand the nature and the impact of a constitutional right. I sat there in a meeting with a series of select boards, boards, where they basically were trying to equate firearms with alcohol and tobacco. Now, town council went out of the way to tell all those folks, and I quote,
I need you to wrap up.
yes,
Al.
ma'am, that I would just say that the issue is that alcohol and tobacco are not protected in the United States Constitution. That got pressed many, many times, and town council finally said, the right to train with firearms, the right to sell and be able to purchase firearms are included in the Second Amendment. And I'm telling you right now, Madam Moderator, that everybody who is pushing this down the way is pushing for a major civil rights lawsuit. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Vote no on one.
Vote. Express your approval or disapproval with your vote, please. At the microphone to my left, Dennis.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road. I would like to bring to the town meeting's attention the fact that there are serious issues with this. One was the constitutional issue, and specifically with this constitutional issue, what I'd like to point out is the fact that You can regulate constitutional protected rights. Second Amendment is obviously a protected right. The problem is when you regulate them, you have to be very explicit in what you expect and very strict. And if the applicants or the person pursuing the interest to try to move forward with it satisfies those, they cannot be denied. There cannot be inserted in any of the process an arbitrary or a sort of a subjective process. It's a very strict thing. If you pass the rules, you get the right. The problem with this particular situation is, in this particular bylaw, is section 6.6.6 and 6.6.7, which gives the planning board special permit authority over this particular process of issuing these authorizations for these types of businesses. Now, I will say two cases. First is the District of Columbia versus Heller, and the second is New York State versus Bruin. In both of those cases, what happened is the Supreme Court said that you have to go straight with the requirements that are required. If you go beyond that and get into subjective evaluations of the right, you're open for a lawsuit. And I think this is going to happen here if you do this. The last two things are simply, what does this try to purport? If it's gun violence, it misses the mark, because the overwhelming instances of gun violence involve unlicensed shooters with unlawful firearms, not honest, law-abiding firearms owners. And the last thing, and I'll just reiterate what Mr. Prescott said, we need revenue. We need revenue in this town. This can make it. We're losing revenue left and right. The tax burden is shifting from commercial to residential. These are businesses that can survive in Massachusetts because, number one, they're convenient, and number two, they carry a certain expertise with those who manage it, which allows them to give a little more staying power. So I would join Mr. Prescott in voting no on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. At the center microphone, please. Please, let's try and get through this so that we can finish tonight. And honestly, booing or clapping just adds to the amount of time it's going to take. Vote, use your vote to express your approval or disapproval.
Thank you. Vicky Geary, 51 Carlisle Road. I'm speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Westford tonight. The League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, along with the League of Women Voters of the United States, holds a long-standing position on the private possession of firearms. Since 1974, the Massachusetts League has supported strict enforcement of present laws concerning handgun ownership and has advocated for measured and responsible access to firearms, including mandated safety courses and improved standardized licensing procedures. The Westford League supports Article 1 as a reasonable regulation to the access of firearms. Public safety is enhanced by creating a buffer zone from schools and other firearm businesses. Article 1 also requires any firearms business to have a safety plan approved by the Westford Police Department. These details provide a reasonable and responsible guardrails on any firearms business operating within our community. While the League previously supported the more restrictive bylaw, this new proposal is a reasonable compromise that balances the concerns of our residents and of law enforcement officials. Based on almost 50 years of League advocacy on this and other social justice issues, the Westford League of Women Voters encourages you to vote yes on Article 1.
Thank you. Please, at the microphone to my right.
My name is John Amato. I live at 88 Chamberlain Road. Good evening. I usually don't write something, just talk, but I'm going to read. I apologize for that. Okay. Second Amendment, the last thing it says is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Does anyone know what that means? Infringed? It means you can't tweak it. You can't mess with it. You can't do things to it. Very important. Massachusetts has two main laws that they regulate firearms from. 29B, that's licensing, FID cards. And it's basically this identification card shall be issued and possessed subject to the following conditions. You file an application. That's the condition, and they have to approve it, all right? You can carry, it's the same thing. You file an application and they have to prove it. They have laws at the state level that are intended to protect our state. Let's start with that. Let's go back to the amendments. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. This is interesting. I never heard this before, but I like it. The First Amendment protects both book buyers and booksellers. That applies to the Second Amendment, gun buyers and gun sellers. And there's an interesting way how the courts look at this. And I did a little bit of research. I'm an engineer, not a lawyer. I don't even play lawyer on a sitcom, okay? Basically, what they've decided through many court cases is that the seller represents the owner. Same thing, take that back. The seller represents the buyer. So when you affect the seller, when you impact the store, I'll give you the references if you want them. When you impact the seller, you impact the right of the buyer. Second Amendment is a personal right, individual right, but it's connected through that way. And several, what do they call it, circuit courts? Several circuit courts have basically indicated that.
John, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
I will gladly wrap up, okay? There were several cases where this happens, and I'm going to wrap up right now. Zoning bylaws that limit where and when you can open and operate a gun shop infringe upon the rights of the public to take advantage of their full rights under the Second Amendment. They create sections and parcels in the town where your right to practice your rights under the Second Amendment are infringed. That's what we're
John,
doing here.
thank you
I'm not
very
done.
much.
Let me
You're well
please
over your
finish.
time. Thank you.
Shut me up.
Thank you. The microphone to my left.
Megan Ackroth, 8 Tiverly Lane. This is not a budget discussion and it's not a Second Amendment discussion. It's a very sound amendment to our bylaws that's endorsed by our police department and our planning board. I'm a taxpayer. I've been here for 13 years and I'm a teacher in our Westford public schools of 8 and 9-year-olds. To insinuate that any educator in our Westford public schools and any parent that sends their child to school would hope that that education is funded by the sale of guns is woefully wrong, and that is insulting. It is insulting to the educators like myself that are forced to have Alice drills with crying, terrified 8-year-olds. Please vote yes.
Thank you. At the microphone in the center, please, please contain yourselves. Microphone in the center, please.
Peter Cena, 13 Salt Fork Road. This is a question in the definition of the type of businesses that would fall under this. I didn't hear anything about businesses which may sell unassembled parts which can be put together by people to create firearms, even firearms that don't have serial numbers and cannot be traced. Why is that?
Thank you for the question. Jeff or Justin? Justin Parada, Town Council.
Hello, everyone. Justin Parada, Town Council for Land Use. So the definition is broad enough to encompass those. We exhaustively used every word we could to make clear that the definition includes sub-assemblies and parts and components and pieces. If it includes all of those, it clearly would include those that didn't have a serial number. So although Jeff didn't give you the the broadest definition as it's written in there, as it's written in the amendment, it would include those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
At the microphone to my right.
Good evening, Cynthia King, 82 Depot Street. And there are a couple of things that I don't agree with that are in this. The first one is requiring a special permit. When one applies for a firearms license, it's through the chief. And I don't see any reason the planning board should have any say in how a firearms store is or anything to do with licensing. It creates some bias and if there's prejudice towards certain things, I don't think it's in the hands of a planning board. It should be in the hands of the chief. The second thing is that this, under page 9, under 666, it talks about a firearm business and that the applicant, which would receive the special permit granted, it's only due for that person and that business at that location. So what happens to that person when they decide they want to sell their business? They have nothing to sell after they've worked hard to build a business because they don't have the permit. They have to go through that again. That's not right. And then the other thing is that, you say that you want safety, but on page 7 under 663, number 3, you're limiting firearms businesses only for the sale and ammo. And why not allow training so you have more safety? Why not allow a firearms a shooting range so that people can be taught the right way to handle of firearms. So I object to those three things. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Microphone to my left.
Andy Malio, 23 Pierce Ave, and I have a couple of questions for the chief. Chief, do you support this? Do you support this article? And do you recommend that we vote yes on this article?
I do support this article and I would request, yes, well, I would ask you to vote yes. It's been a long road. I think this is a great compromise.
Thank you.
Thank you. At the microphone in the center.
Diane Wood, 122 Depot. I think we could argue left and right about Second Amendment rights, about what the law says, which I suspect the majority of people in this room have had it. I know I have had it. I guess the key question to me is this what you want for your community? Is this what you want Westford to be known as? Would be key for me. Do you want to be known as the community on 495 that'll easily sell guns to you regardless? So that'll be one question. And the other question, a reminder to people that last year this time, the community did vote. They didn't make the 2/3 vote, but if you recall, the majority of people at town meeting last year agreed to that stricter bylaw. So I don't quite understand now why with a much less restrictive bylaw being presented, that the majority of you wouldn't, 2/3 of you would not support it. I'm kind of at a loss because we didn't make the 2/3 last time, but with the majority of people, your neighbors, your friends, your family voted in favor of this. And then a couple of other points since then, examples that are already making their way across the state. We're not alone. And I think most of you understand that. Since our meeting last year, Acton passed a fairly restrictive zoning bylaw, limiting it to 2 stores, similar buffers. As a matter of fact, Groton just on October 5th passed their bylaw, limiting it to 3 stores in the town. Andover recently went through their town meeting and they shot down a fairly liberal bylaw because the people wanted zero bylaw, 0 stores in their community. And that's what they're fighting for.
Diane,
So
I need to ask you to wrap up.
that's it. I just want to point out what type of community do you want?
At the microphone to my right.
Steve Brierly, 16 Phillips Drive. I have a question and a comment. My question is for the assistant town manager. He mentioned that firing ranges are not included in this. How are they handled in terms of zoning and approval by whomever?
The question is, how are firing ranges handled in our zoning bylaw?
So firing ranges were taken out of this version, so they wouldn't be covered under this bylaw at all. The broader question is how they would be interpreted under zoning hasn't really been addressed. It could be a recreational business. It could be, I suppose, some sort of services business. That question doesn't really need to be answered in the concept of this bylaw. If it ever came before the town, it would go to the building inspector first to make that zoning interpretation. And if there was a question about that, then it would go to the ZBA. But I can definitively say it's not included in this version at all.
Okay, thank you. Now, a comment. I'm getting a little tired of having the Second Amendment waived in front of us for this. This article has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does not guarantee your right to have a firearms store within a mile of your house or whatever. We're not banning stores in town. We're simply regulating where it's sensible to place them. It's a reasonable request that they be properly licensed, inspected, and approved by the police department and the planning board. Vote yes.
Thank you, Steve. Please, at the microphone to my left.
Hi, good evening. Michael Bonifant, 3 Hadley Road. So I have struggled up here with this because I fully support the Constitution. I fully support the Second Amendment. However, I am for this amendment. As a member of planning board, I voted against the first rendition of this. The idea of taxes, there's no limit on the number of the permits that could be allowed in this town except for the buffer. So I don't think the tax question is a valid question. I think that just as you can't scream fire in a movie theater, right? Trampling on the First Amendment. We are asking for a small little extra piece on getting a permit in the town of Westford. And if you are fully able to get the license and you're not within 500 feet and somebody on the planning board denies you, you can easily fight that. It's not a restriction against that. It's just one more layer that the chief has asked for that I think makes sense for this town. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. At the center microphone, please.
Bernadette Durald, 81 North Main Street. I have two questions. One, does this prevent me from owning a gun? If not, it doesn't, to me, come under
Let's
the
get-
amendment.
Let's get
And-
the answer to that
Okay.
question. Okay, the
Okay.
answer is no.
And
Yeah, go on.
my second question is, will this prevent people from coming into town to open a store?
No, it won't prevent anyone from opening a store. It adds a layer of regulation to how that store would be operated, just as many other businesses have regulations as to how they're operated.
Thank
This
you.
process started because there was no specific set of regulations in Westford for firearms business.
Thank you. At the microphone to my right.
Eileen Tatro, 15 Oak Road. My pronouns are she and they, and I'd like to call the question.
Okay, we have a motion to call the question. Is there a second? This motion requires a 2/3 vote. If it's voted, it will stop debate, and then we will go back and vote on the question itself. Is everybody clear on that? So right now, we're just voting on whether or not to terminate debate and move to a vote on Article 1. If you want to terminate debate and move to a vote on Article 1, when I say the voting is open, you'll press the green 1A button. If you do not want to terminate debate, if you want additional debate before we vote, you'll press the red 2B button when I say voting is open. Voting is open. If you want to terminate debate, press the green 1A button. If you want to have more debate, press the red 2B button. Do you know what the number? Voting is closed. The motion to terminate debate passes. The vote is 555 to 85. You'd think I could remember two numbers at once when I look, but I have to look back every time. Okay, so now we're going to move to a vote on whether or not to pass Article 1. This also requires a 2/3 majority for the motion to pass because it's a zoning bylaw. Is everybody clear on what we're voting on? When I say voting's open, if you want to vote in favor of Article 1, you'll press the green 1A button. If you want to vote against Article 1, you'll press the red 2B button. Voting is now open. To vote in favor, press the green 1A yes button. To vote against, press the red 2B no button. Close it. Voting is now closed. The motion fails. 386 yes, 263 no. We're now moving on to Article 2. Yep.
Can I make,
Yes, yes, Dennis.
can I make a motion to take Article 10 out of order, please?
You can if you get a second. Is there a second to that motion? Okay. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to take Article 10 out of order right now, basically ahead of the other 4 articles that we have before us. So, one moment, please. That question is debatable. Does anybody have any questions or comments about whether or not we should take Article 10 out of order? All right, seeing none, we'll move to determine whether or not we're going to take Article 10 now instead of at the end. If you're in favor of taking Article 10 out of order, you'll press the green 1A yes button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red 2B no button. This motion requires a, one moment. This motion only requires a majority. I'm sorry, was there someone? Okay, yep, that's fair. Dennis, if you can say why you want to take this out of order. Quiet, please.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road. The reason I moved this was I think this is a very significant debate. And we just want to make sure that everybody is still sharp and ready to go. And I think this is a good time to have this debate. So that's the reason I did it.
All right, does that answer the question? All right, we're going to go ahead and move to the vote. It's a simple majority. If you're in favor of moving this article to be discussed now, green 1A. If you're opposed, red 2B. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The motion to take Article 10 out of order passes. It's 477 yes, 447 yes, to 166 no. All right. Under Article 10, I have a motion that the town vote to advise the select board to work with the town manager and with representatives in the state legislature, currently Jim Arciero, representative, and John Cronin, senator, to introduce a bill to the legislature for the 2025-2026 session, seeking authorization for the town of Westford to revise the format of town meeting, both annual and special, to enable registered voters to vote on warrant articles without physically attending town meeting. 2 proposed methods of achieving this end would be A, a ballot vote on warrant articles subsequent to town meeting using current ballot voting procedures, or B, a hybrid town meeting with people able to participate and vote on warrant articles either in person or remotely, e.g. online. There may be other more satisfactory methods of achieving the same end, that is to enable registered voters to vote on warrant articles without physically attending town meeting. In this way, participating in decisions regarding the town would be made available to those registered voters who, for one reason or another, are not able to physically attend town meeting and are currently excluded from town decision-making. The town further advises that updates regarding the status and progress of this initiative and the resulting bill in the state legislature should be included in the town manager's monthly update. Is there a second to that motion? That is a citizen's petition, which is why I read the entire thing in full, so that you would all know exactly what the petitioner is asking for. And the presentation is going to be made by the lead petitioner, Bill Taffel. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The purpose of Article 10 is to enable you to vote on warrant articles without having to attend town meeting. The requirement to attend is part of Massachusetts law. So Article 10 asks our select board to work with our state representatives to make the necessary changes to state law. The article does not make the change itself. A bill needs to be submitted to wend its way through the legislature, which is bound to take some time, but it gets the process started. Why do we need to change a process that's been in place for hundreds of years? The requirement that citizens be present at town meeting to vote on warrant articles is a huge obstacle to a large part of the population. Many people can't attend town meeting for valid reasons. As a result, decisions are made by a small fraction of the electorate and do not reflect the views of the town as a whole. Despite its initial intent of being a democratic process, town meeting has ended up excluding most of the town from voting on important issues that affect them. Can we move the slide ahead one?
He's going to do it from there, Bill.
Back one.
Is that it?
There we go. There are many valid reasons why people may not be able to attend town meeting. The first is rigid or demanding work schedules and business travel. Before I retired, when I was working full-time, the work was demanding. I traveled a lot and my schedule was not my own. If I was scheduled to be out of town when a town meeting occurred, it was not necessarily something that I could change. A second is responsibility for children. Perhaps only one parent may attend while the other parent is taking care of the children. Perhaps neither can attend. A third is age or infirmity. It can be hard for anyone, but especially seniors, to sit all day listening to endless presentations and discussions simply to be able to vote. Fourth, since COVID, many people are apprehensive about sitting in a large room with a lot of unmasked people for fear of exposure to disease. And fifth, in recent meetings during discussions on volatile issues, some participants have become loud, unruly, and aggressive to the point where many people, particularly women, are actually scared. I've had women tell me that they moved to the back of the room with their children so that they could make a speedy exit in case things got too stormy, or that they would never attend another town meeting. We shouldn't make people go through an ordeal simply to vote. We should make voting easy, not hard. Let's try this. At the same time, it has become much easier for people to become informed on the issues with resources such as videos, news, and letters on WestfordCAT and the League of Women Voters article preview. People can easily become informed about the issues without sitting through a long and tedious town meeting. Westford can't make this change on its own. Rules regarding town meeting are made by the state, so changes can only be made by passing a bill through the state legislature. Article 10 asks the select board to work with state representatives to get such a bill into the legislature. While a detailed solution is not specified in the article, two approaches are offered for consideration. Hold town meeting as usual, but vote on warrant articles subsequently on a paper ballot at the polls, or hold a hybrid town meeting allowing remote participation in voting. Several myths are commonly cited to oppose allowing people to vote without attending town meeting. Quote, town meeting is the purest form of democracy. Maybe this was true 200 years ago, but with the current town population and the demands of daily life, it has become an obstacle to democracy through what I call unintended voter suppression. Quote, if people really cared, they would find a way to attend. That is just not true. People may care a lot about the issues, but still not be able to attend for reasons mentioned earlier. Quote, many people listen to discussions on articles and change their minds. I don't believe this is true either. Most people who come to town meeting are already informed, know what they think, and just want to vote. Quote, town meeting is too valuable an institution to give up. There's nothing in this article that says we won't still have a town meeting. People who feel they benefit from a town meeting can still attend. However, all those who can't attend will still be able to have their vote counted. Quote, it's too hard and takes too long to get the state to change anything. It is hard, and it does take a long time to get a bill through the state legislature. That doesn't mean we should just give up. It means that the sooner we get the process started, the sooner we'll achieve our aim.
Bill, I need you to wrap up.
Yep, last page. The longer we wait, the longer we'll have to suffer through the undemocratic problems of the outdated town meeting form of government. Let's get a new, modernized process in the works for Westford. Vote yes on Article 10. Thank you.
All right, let's start the questions with the center microphone.
Erica Cole, Francis Hill Road. I believe the town meeting is one of the last remaining spaces where we have to listen to each other. This is one of the few places where we must sit with those who think differently from ourselves and hopefully see them as people who sometimes have a point. Sometimes we might even see their point and change our vote. I think that's the whole point of having a town meeting. On the flip side, a hybrid town meeting has the potential to allow a voter to monitor how a town meeting is to monitor town meeting while also doing laundry and watching YouTube. Conceivably, it could allow one person per household to do the voting for all the voters in that house, since we really can't see who hits the enter button. Remote voting allows voters to choose not to listen to the other side. Yeah, that happens here too. But for whatever reason, most people here at least pretend to listen to the person at the mic. Also, presumably voting remotely would be a voting right. So how small would this crowd get? This crowd, the one that does the actual deliberation. Obviously, the other alternative is having a ballot. And by definition, a ballot means there's no deliberation, no hearing the other side. I hope that you consider that the motion, that best, sorry, let me get this right. I hope that you consider the motion that best, for the best vote outcome for any given article is one that asks voters to consider all sides, and that in-person deliberation is the best way to achieve that. I hope that you'll consider that is an engaged in-person deliberation that makes a town meeting vote different from a ballot vote. I understand having sympathy for those who can't make town meeting. I also know that regular town meetings are extremely predictable, last April notwithstanding, and we can each put town meeting on our calendar years in advance. Having free childcare and free transportation provided by the town removes even more barriers to attending.
Erica, I need you to wrap up.
Some folks might still not come. I hope we don't throw out the proverbial baby with the bathwater by weakening the deliberative process to accommodate that reality. Please vote, well, whatever it is, vote no.
Thank you. At the microphone to my left.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road. Madam Moderator, I'm a veteran of 40 years of open town meeting in the town of Westford. And in a little opposition to Mr. Taffel, I actually learned about democracy in this process over the 40 years, which I didn't know before. And as you rightly said in beginning this meeting, this is the legislative body of the town. And there are certain qualities of a legislature. First, it has to be attentive. It has to be here. It has to be able to deliberate. It has to be able to, at times, compromise. And I've seen compromises happen on this floor here. And then eventually you have the right to make the amendments and to vote. Why would you want to give that up? Now, the problem is, not the problem is, but every member of this town, and there are obstacles. There's no doubt about it, and nobody's arguing that there isn't. But this is a town that allows anybody that wants to come up here and participate to do so. That's a very valuable right that you don't want to lose very easily, okay? The last thing is this, is that I'm very concerned. This is done in York, Maine quite a bit, menu voting. I know it's done in New York. And what happens, what's actually happens is people will flood a particular town meeting, hit out a button to knock out a particular issue they don't want, and then they leave. We actually saw that happen here about 2 years ago, where about 300 or 400 people came in here, voted for one issue, then walked out the door. If we're going to have effective legislation, we have to be involved. We have to be in dynamic relationships with one another. We have to listen and we have to work this out, even though it's difficult. Now, it may be time that open town meeting needs to be looked at. And maybe we need to start looking at another form. But remote voting is not the direction to go. Thank you.
Thank you. At the microphone to my right.
Steve Brierly, 16 Phillips Drive. This is an interesting topic to be considered, and it's worthy of consideration. But my concern is at this point that I see no mechanism in what is proposed here for the final bill, for the town to see the final bill and have a say in it before it's submitted to the legislature. So I'd like to propose an amendment. And this would be adding a sentence at the end of the article. The proposed bill must be approved at town meeting prior to submission to the state legislature.
I'm going to ask town council to just address that. Did you hear the question, Greg? Excuse me one moment. Greg Corbo, Town Council.
Good evening. Thank you. Through you, Madam Moderator. So the proposal here is to add language to this to require that the bill come back before town meeting before it gets submitted to the legislature. However, the way that the present proposal is written, it would have to come back for a subsequent town meeting vote before anything could be submitted to the legislature in any event. What this article does is it requests in advisory fashion that the select board work with your state legislatures to develop a bill for submission to the state legislature to pass a law relative to the town of Westford. Well, in order to pass a law that is only relative to the town of Westford, town meeting has to actually vote to approve the submission of that law. So at the stage where we are now, we're simply taking a sense of the meeting as to whether or not you want your select board to work with your state representative and senator to develop this bill, to bring it back here for a subsequent vote. And then if it passes that subsequent vote, to have it go through the normal process in the legislature. I think at the moderator's suggestion, this additional language is not necessary to achieve what is being asked by that particular amendment.
Now, Steve, that doesn't mean you can't make that motion. I just wanted to clarify that it would have to come back to town meeting anyway. So it's up to you now.
No, that's fine. I was not aware of that. It's just that there was nothing in this particular amendment, this article that said that. As long as that's understood that has to happen, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. At the center microphone.
Kathy Ricketson, 5 Westford Hills Road. I think that just for clarity, I would like to hear from the select board what they see as their role in this process, as they are supposed to work with the state senator and state legislature. So can you please give us a little more information on how you see this working?
Scott Hazelton, Chair of the Select Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for the question. The Select Board took no position on this article because, as it says in the first sentence, it's for town meeting to advise the Select Board. It'd be rather arrogant for us to say we do or do not want your advice. So we took no position. That being the case, if it were to pass, I think our view is that we work with our state representative, our state senator, They appeared at a select board meeting back in, I believe, September. We discussed this very issue. They would agree with Bill. It's very complicated. It's not just Westford. It would take many other towns to come together on some kind of legislation. It'll take time. But if we're directed to work that out with our state rep and our state senator, we'll do our best.
Thank you. At the microphone to my left.
Randy Steer, 15 Drawbridge Road. I want to speak in favor of Article 10. To decide whether to find a better way to allow the entire voting population of Westford, over 10,000 people, an opportunity to vote on town issues. We come here knowing that we've already disenfranchised the voice and vote of all those who can't be here tonight for all the reasons that Bill mentioned, which are all valid. Those voices and votes should be the most important for this particular article. We come here tonight knowing that we've already suppressed the vote of 80% of those people, to simply use round numbers, because we're voting in a manner that doesn't allow for more than 20% of the residents to vote. We come knowing that at the national and state level, democracy and the Constitution expect and require that we allow as many eligible voters to vote as possible, whether that be through early voting, absentee ballot, provisional voting, same-day registration, student voting, military voting, or election day voting. We come knowing that in the midst of floods and hurricanes, fires and pandemics, we have made, are making, and will continue to make many adjustments to the voting process to ensure that not a single voter is disenfranchised. Any requirement put in place that results with eligible voters being refused the right to vote is undemocratic, unconstitutional, and rejected by the courts. And yet here we are. In order to vote tonight, we're requiring that 10,000 eligible voters spend over 5 hours with inadequate parking, not enough seats, a 3-hour window, running the risk of catching COVID, flu, or cold. Those requirements should not pass the test of any democratic process. The notion that one has to be present at this meeting to become informed and hear other viewpoints is as antiquated as the dinosaurs. The notion,
Randy, I have to ask you to wrap up.
okay. To not pass this article is to invite further disenfranchisement, to invite even more anger and resentment towards government, and to reveal complete hypocrisy on the part of an otherwise intelligent.
You're beyond your
panel.
time. Thank you. I'm sorry, but I feel I have to clarify. We were prepared for 2,700 voters tonight. We had 4 rooms ready. We had plenty of seating. That's got nothing to do with this article. I just want to clarify that fact.
Madam Moderator,
To
I
my
have a
right.
point of order.
Yes.
Can that slide please be taken down?
At the microphone to my right, please.
Robin Connell, 81 Hildreth Street. You hear me? I'm in favor of this article since our current town meeting.
I'm sorry, you'll need to speak closer to the microphone. Pull it down so you can have it right near your mouth.
Robin Connell, 81 Hildreth Street.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of this article since our current town meeting format, in my opinion, is completely antiquated. Having to give up.
I'm sorry, folks can't hear you. You really
Having-
need to get your mouth up to the ball of the microphone there. Pull it down a little bit so it's closer. Try
Okay.
that.
Okay, I'm in favor of this article since our current town meeting format, in my opinion, is completely antiquated. Having to give up an entire Saturday or Monday evening after working all day or week to sit through a tedious, sometimes 8-hour meeting is completely unreasonable in this day and age with advances in technology that we could use to make this process easier, and the technology exists now. Unless there is a controversial vote on the warrant, the same small number of voters, which generally numbers about 200 people, decide how we govern the town. This is clearly not the definition of a representative democracy when there are approximately, and I'm not clear on this number, but I'm throwing it out there, 18,000 registered voters in Westford.
I urge all of you to vote yes on Article 10 to bring us into the 21st century using modern technology instead of living in the 1600s, so we can eventually implement a modern form of town governance that is truly democratic and representative of all registered voters instead of just a small few. And I just like to emphasize, we are not deciding the format. We're just asking the select board to work with the state reps to explore how we could handle this to make it more inclusive and not be in person. So thank you.
Thank you. At the microphone in the center.
Hi, Justin Morgan, 6 Hearthstone. I just have a question for the lead petitioner. This advises but doesn't bind the town to do anything. Similarly, it would advise, I assume, but not bind our state government representatives to do anything. So my question is, has any discussion taken place to take the temperature of our state elected officials on whether they would do anything? Thank you.
Bill, you can answer that.
There are a number of bills in the legislature now from different towns, many of which are called modernized town meeting. Anybody who has tried to follow what goes on in the state legislature will know that it's practically impossible. And it seems as if nothing is happening on most of those bills. The idea of Westford putting its own petition together is really twofold. One is it just adds another voice to the voices that are asking for change and may influence those legislators. And the second one is it's not impossible. I know Wayland is trying to do this, to get a change through that would apply specifically to Westford without trying to boil the whole ocean of the state.
Thank you, Bill.
Now, do we know whether there's receptivity of the state representatives to that? I don't know. I've talked to Jim Arciero and nothing has happened.
Okay, I'm going to take the people at the microphone and then we'll move to a vote. I think that'll probably be enough discussion. At the microphone to my left.
Greg Flom, 3 Quarry Hill Road. I think there are a number of problems here, but I'll go quick as I can. One is that this directs or advises the select board to come up with legislation to for a better alternative, but it doesn't acknowledge the possibility that there isn't a better alternative. And I readily acknowledge that the town meeting process is flawed. I don't know that there is a better alternative. One of the first ones proposed in this motion, I'm surprised it hasn't been mentioned, is used by many New Hampshire towns. And it is also incredibly flawed. Dennis alluded to this when he spoke of Maine. The deliberative session, which is similar to this, people can make amendments, but they don't actually make the final vote, is often very poorly attended, which makes it very vulnerable to small special interest groups who can come in and say, change a motion to allocate funds for a new dump truck to allocate $1 for a new dump truck. Then when the voters get to vote on that in the election, they're voting yes or no on $1. They're not really buying or not buying a dump truck. Is that improving democracy? No, it is not. In the interest of time, I won't go into some of the other problems that arise with that just simply haven't been acknowledged in this proposal. So I'm voting no. Thank you.
At the microphone to my right.
Thank you. Aaron Cohen, 22 Woodridge Lane. Come to a few of these, and I'm going to be honest, I happen to like them. But that being said, I'm here. My wife is not. She wants to attend, but we have a young child who's too young. We have an older child that could come here and get care. Yes, yes. But we chose 7 p.m. on a school night for a town meeting. Kids go to bed, in theory, at a good hour. You know, coming here does not help that. So I have to ask, why did we choose this time to have this discussion, to have this meeting? And what can we do to actually have people be more involved, who are parents, who, I mean, you've made huge considerations for all of us, but 7 p.m. on a Monday? You know, if we had remote, trust me, my wife would be remote right here, listening in, participating. My neighbors would be here, would be participating remotely. They can't because we chose 7 p.m. on a Monday night. This would help. But at the same time, 7 p.m. on a Monday
Okay,
night?
I've heard it 3 times, so I need to.
Yeah, I have to ask, why?
I need to respond to that. We have our special town meeting at 7 p.m. on a Monday, and we have our annual town meeting at 9 a.m. on Saturday. And believe it or not, there are people that don't like either one. Many people don't like 7 p.m. on Monday. Many people would prefer it. Many people don't like 9 a.m. on Saturday. Many people prefer it. That's the reason we have 2 different times. Hopefully the people who can't make it to one can at least make it to another. Again, this has nothing to do with this article. I'm just answering the question about why do we have it at 7 p.m. on a Monday?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at the microphone in the center. I think that's right.
Wayne Fernald, 3 Bluebrook Lane. I have sympathy for those that complain that it might be inconvenient to be here, but this is the purest form of town governance that anywhere in the world exists. And I agree that there are other things that we can do. I can help carpool people here that don't have a way to get here. I can help organize babysitters. I can help with those things that allow people to be here that need to be here. But this is a pure form of governance that we need to hold on to. And there's nothing that the state could decide for us that would make it any purer. There are also concerns today that we have with the accountability of our votes. And if people are going to vote absentee, I'm not sure that full accountability would ever be able to exist. So I vote no on this, please.
Thank you for your comment. At the microphone to my, please keep your applause to yourself.
Cynthia
Microphone to my
King,
left.
82 Depot Street. I have to ditto the gentleman that just spoke, but I'd like to say that, you know, whoever put up the display wrote why you can't come. And I say those are just excuses. Last year when we had our town meeting, a friend broke her ankle, couldn't drive. She called me, I picked her up and brought her. A gentleman that has a handicap and difficulty getting around, he made it here. So if you want to make it here, you will. I was supposed to be working tonight. I changed my schedule. People work from hybrid, people work from home now. They have much more flexibility. So I think all of those, I brought up 3 kids. I never missed a day of work. I rearranged for childcare. So if you want to, you'll be here. One thing I do want to say is we have voting day, right? And if it's not a big thing like presidents, I remember like maybe 2 years ago, we had 1,800 people that went to the polls and voted when you had the polls open from 7 in the morning till whatever time at night. So I think that's all excuses. So many more people could have come out and voted. And I don't think that people are informed. And I think they learn about that when they come here. I talk to people, they don't know what's going on in the town. They don't even know what the articles are, even when you mail them to the home. So I think that town meeting is an excellent opportunity for people to voice their opinion, for us to listen to each other. I totally agree with this first speaker with everything she said.
Okay, just to clarify, I'm going to take the next 2 people at this microphone and the person at the center microphone, and that's it, because I said before I was going to stop at the end of that. So at the microphone to my right.
Hi, Eileen Tatro, 15 Oak Road. My pronouns are she and they. So let me talk about some disenfranchisement here. First of all, you can't always come, you can't always find a way unless you're kind of a jerk. And I'm going to say this way. Last October, when we voted, I was sitting at home in bed. Why was I sitting at home in bed? Because I was COVID positive. I wasn't coming here to share that with all of you. That disenfranchised me because I was sick and I decided not to share my germs and make it a super spreader event. Okay? Second one, my daughter is 18. She's voted in every situation she's been able to vote in, I believe, so far. Well, okay, not last town meeting. She can't even attend this town meeting. She's not in the state. She's at school away, as are many of our children, okay? They're residents in this town. They get a voice, except they don't because they're not here right now and they can't come home from college, whether they're, you know, maybe at UMass Lowell they can. She's in Connecticut. Friends are in Florida, you know, whatever, they can't come back. So there are definitely a couple situations where you just can't come back. You won't come and share your germs with everybody. And I think that that's a really important thing. The third thing I just want to say here is that there's been a lot of, well, we've always done it that way. So like 100-ish years ago, I wouldn't have been allowed to vote at all. Man, in my lifetime, I couldn't have had a credit card like around when I was born, which gives you guys an idea of how old I am. But, you know, it's just say just because it was always that way doesn't mean it should be that way. We are modernizing, we are advancing, and we need to give everybody who has a right to have a voice that right to have a voice, even if it's brand new, even if it's something that's different from how we've always done it. That's it.
At the center microphone.
Thank you, Jennifer Valandry, 25 Elmeria Circle. In theory, I love the concept of town meeting. It conjures up images of Norman Rockwell paintings. There's one where you see a guy who looks like Abraham Lincoln. He's speaking his piece. It's beautiful, but we need to catch up to the times. Basically, somebody mentioned, oh, I'll be happy to carpool people in. Well, you're going to fly in the out-of-state college students and pay for their tickets? We're in California. So we can vote by mail for state and presidential elections. Why can't we consider that for town meetings? Town meeting currently is a form of voter suppression for reasons that we've heard. If you look around this room, there were certain demographics that are overrepresented here and certain demographics that are underrepresented. Do you see any students who look of college age? Do you see people with physical disabilities? Also, there are a lot of people, okay, well, more than a number, a small number, more than, all right. Okay, hold on, I am not done. Thank you very much. So, people with significant employment duties, people who work the night shift. It's a form of voter suppression. Yes, on Article 10, modernized town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last voter on my right.
Hi, I'm Rachel Amato, 88 Chamberlain Road. Really, I just have kind of a question, which is, I like the idea that we allow more people to vote and more people to be involved and everything else. But my question is, how many people on average, when it's not a presidential election, go to the ballot? Do we know that answer to that question?
Do you have the answer, Bill?
Yeah, I looked at that, I'm going to say 5 years ago or so when I brought this up the first time. And on the elections at the polls, on average, roughly 5 times as many people showed up as at town meetings.
I'm sorry, how many?
5 times.
Okay, thank you.
So,
All
I
right.
mean, roughly, if there are 200 people at town meeting, there'd be 1,000 people voting at the polls.
Excuse
You
me
know,
one
it
moment.
fluctuated.
We have Representative Arciero's aide here who wants to speak, and I'm going to allow her to speak, even though I said I was going to cut off the additional speakers. Go ahead, Anita.
Can you hear me? Okay. Anita Tonakarngwen, 9 Plain Road. Thank you, Mr. Taffel. I know you're very passionate about this topic. We did meet with the representative earlier this year to talk about it, and he has a lot of different ideas. And I just wanted to reiterate that advising the state representative and also the state senator is really going to come from town meeting. So they would file a home rule petition that the town meeting votes on. So they're not going to file something with just ideas from the select board because the select board is directed by town meeting. So it's going to come here to decide what that looks like the senator and the representative are not going to file something without the whole town's vote. So I know that was mentioned, but I just wanted to reiterate that, because I think people think this is going to be a conversation between the representatives and the select board, but it's really going to be town meeting that decides. Thank you for adding me the last second.
All right. That ends the discussion, and I'm going to open the vote shortly. If you want to vote in favor of Article 10, in favor of the citizens petition, you're going to press the green 1A button. If you want to vote against it, you're going to press the red 2B button. Voting is now open. Voting is closed. The motion passes. It's a simple majority, 333 yes, 269 no. All right, now we're going to go back to Article 2. If you're leaving, please do it quietly so we can continue with our business. And don't forget to give your clicker in when you leave. Please put your clickers in the box by the door. We're now at Article 2. Articles 2 and 3 are both zoning articles pertaining to the same uses. Article 2 defines and regulates the uses, and Article 3 sets out parking requirements. Folks, can you please leave quietly if you're leaving? And Article 3 sets out parking requirements for the uses. So we'll be explaining and discussing them together, but we'll vote on them separately. Under Article 2, I have a motion that the town amend our zoning bylaw to define, update, and regulate use allowances for contractor's yard, general service establishment, business or professional offices, medical offices, brew pubs, breweries, distilleries or wineries, restaurants, and massage establishments, as shown in the handout titled Article 2 Zoning Bylaw Amendment, define and update certain uses. Is there a second to Article 2? Okay, Town Planner Joe Genowitz will explain both Article 2 and 3 at this time, but we're only going to vote. You can ask questions on both articles, but we'll vote on them one at a time. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Article 2 proposes to define and regulate several new uses under our zoning bylaw and make some modest changes to a few existing uses and definitions. While it is best practice to regularly review our zoning bylaw, the Land Use Management Department has received several inquiries for the same types of businesses over the last couple of years where the proposed business did not neatly fit into any of our current use categories. This matters in instances where if a proposed use is not defined under our bylaw, then it may be prohibited. In such cases, petitioners may seek a use variance, but this has a high legal threshold that deters a lot of potential applicants. By defining and regulating these uses, the town maintains control while also promoting additional economic development options to strengthen the commercial tax base. A few of these new use categories, as Madam Moderator alluded to, include brew pubs, breweries, distilleries, wineries, and contractors' yards. We're also seeking to allow restaurants in the Industrial Highway District, which is primarily along Route 110 and along portions of Liberty Way and Powers Road, and to allow massage establishments in, again, the Industrial Highway District, the Commercial Highway District, which is also primarily along Route 110, and the Industrial A District, which is primarily along Route 40. Article 3 seeks to establish parking requirements for several uses or make some minor changes for uses currently identified within the table of parking requirements. For the new uses under Article 2, if town meeting votes to establish these business types as distinct uses, then we should also establish a parking requirement for these uses. The most prominent change to our existing parking regulations is reducing the requirement for business or professional offices. The proposal is to reduce this requirement from one space for every 200 square feet of gross floor area to one for every 400 square feet of gross floor area. This stems in large part from industry changes for a number of businesses or professional office uses where the proliferation of remote or hybrid work has become normal practice. But it also is supported from historical data that staff reviewed of businesses here in Westford. The data demonstrated that even before the pandemic, less parking was needed for office spaces. By having parking requirements that are more in line with modern day usage, the town may realize several benefits as land that otherwise is built for parking that is not being used is available for other objectives. For instance, reducing the amount of impervious area helps to reduce heat island effects, create more open space, and reduce stormwater impacts, each of which helps the town achieve some of its larger sustainability goals. Alternatively, it can allow for additional development by either making new projects more financially viable for reducing the cost of building parking for the development, or providing more opportunities for redevelopment by making our existing developed land more efficient. Additional businesses can help diversify the town's tax base and create synergies where area businesses support one another. So by making these small changes in our zoning bylaw, we hope we can provide the opportunities to continue to make positive changes and enable additional commercial development here in town. These articles have received a favorable recommendation from the Select Board, the Planning Board, and Economic Development Committee. We hope to have your support for both of these articles this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mike Bonifant, Chair of the Planning Board. And Mike, you can give the report for 2 and 3, if you would.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Michael Bonifant, Chair of the Planning Board. For both of these amendments, we opened the public hearing on August 19th, 2024, held several public hearings, and finally closed on the 16th of September, 2024, and unanimously voted in favor for it. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to questions. I see a question at the microphone to my left.
Rose O'Donnell, 8 Sassafras Road. Can we add gun stores?
Rose.
I'm actually only
I
asking.
believe that would be beyond the scope of the article.
Why? We're doing different kinds of businesses.
Do you really want an answer?
I do. I
Okay,
really would like an
Let's get town
answer.
council to answer whether or not it's beyond the scope of the article.
I mean, it says.
Thank you through your Madam Moderator. While it's the moderator's call, the warrant gave.
Thanks.
Generally speaking, the warrant gave the voters notice that certain things were going to be voted on tonight based on what was on file, as well as what was heard before the planning board. And even if we could somehow go beyond the scope of the article, we are confined to the scope of what was heard at the planning board's public hearing. And so an amendment to create an entirely different use or regulate an entirely different use than what we have here would not be within the scope of that.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it was worth asking.
Thank you, Rose. At the center microphone, please.
Steve Brierly, 16 Phillips Drive. I just have the proverbial dumb question. What is a contractor's yard?
Joe, can we get an answer for that? What is the definition of a contractor's yard? We don't need Webster's, just a general definition.
So in general, it's an area where you would have certain types of businesses will be able to store their trucks or other associated equipment. They may have an office out of there to work out of, but you generally wouldn't see a lot of transient activity out of there. It's just simply a place where they would leave their equipment there, presumably overnight, so it's in a contained space. And then they would, go in and out basically at the beginning of the day and at the end of their day, bringing their equipment back.
So this is a permanent facility, not a transient, just work on a particular site project.
It's generally a storage area for people to be able to store certain equipment like trucks or other heavy
Thank you.
equipment.
At the microphone to my right.
Patrick McGinn from Boston Road.
So I guess that I have a question as well. So I'm just wondering about the overall purpose of some of these, because I'm reading about the massage establishments, which caught my attention. And it says here that they're not permitted in any zoning district right now, yet we have 10 of them? Like, I had no idea we had 10 massage places in Massachusetts, in Westford. So if they're not permitted, but we have 10 of them, how is that? And then why are we taking the time to do this? Number 21.
Okay, we'll get an answer to that question. Jeff Morissette, still
Thank you.
Assistant Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So I can answer part of your questions. So for instance, if there are 10 in existence now, I believe somewhere around perhaps 4 of them did seek use variance relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So they did secure the necessary relief for that. I will say that sometimes businesses do appear in town, and sometimes if they're titled a spa or something without using the word massage, it isn't necessarily obvious what the full use is. I will also say that not everyone seeks a sign permit where it might provide notice or warning to the building department so they can make a determination of that use. So that, and if you're asking about the why, there have been a number of businesses who did seek that relief in recent years. The zoning board did grant it consistently those 3 or 4 times. And what we'll say, what was frustrating that we heard from some of the prospective applicants is massage therapy as part of an overall other business use may be permitted as of right, but as a standalone operation, it's prohibited. And so they thought, the planning board thought it was at least time to ask the question to town meeting.
Thank you for that. I have nothing against massage places, but I was just trying to figure out, we spent a lot of time talking about the gun stores and all the permits and stuff required for that. And all of a sudden, these other things are showing up apparently without that sort of, but I understand your answer on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At the microphone to my left.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Catherine Steele Danton, 236 Concord Road. I just have a question, and forgive my ignorance. What about businesses that are the contractors' yard type setups out of their residences or multi-use? How are those handled either now or with this? For instance, if you have things like a farm that might also be doing contracting or other multi-use type businesses.
Thank you. Justin Prada again, Town Council for Land Use. So when a use is connected to another principal use, like a farm, that's what we call an ancillary or a secondary use. Whether or not it would be allowed would depend on an investigation as to whether or not that's typical to that principal use. What these amendments do is create different principal uses that are definitively categorized under these new amendments and definitions. As Jeff alluded to, there may be in town some massage services being done at things that aren't specifically defined as massage parlors. Excuse me. And that's the meaning for these type of amendments. So a contractor yard's amendment to make that a specific principal use would not affect those types of things happening at another property that has another principal use.
Thank you. Does that include a residence that's also used that way?
Yeah, well, right. So if a residence has an element of something like that, whether that's allowed is a different question, right? It would still be whether or not that's an allowed secondary use to the principal use. But this definition of a contractor's yard would not apply to that use at a residence. It would only be if it was a separate principal use.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, at the center microphone.
Troy Evangelista to Atwater Drive. My question is related to the definitions of distillery and brewery and winery. Does that include similar establishments that aren't under those specific definitions? For example, meaderies or other forms of alcohol that aren't typically known in these 3 categories? And if not, why not?
We'll get you an answer.
So the definitions, excuse me, so the definitions are all here. There was a question about a definition of a contractor's yard, and I just sort of would reiterate that. These are all in your handouts, so you can see exactly what the definition is. The definition of brewery, distillery, and winery that's proposed talks about a primary use for the production and distribution of malt, spirits, vinous beverages with a tasting room. So Whether that would fall into what you're proposing would depend on whether that would fall in this written definition. I don't know enough about that industry to know how that would be parceled out in every instance, but it's pretty broadly defined for anything relating to the production of alcohol on a smallish scale.
Well, that's the point. I guess it doesn't generally say and similar alcoholic beverages. And I'm wondering if that should be amended to include, so there's no question that it's limited to classical distilled alcohols.
Is there something that wouldn't be malt, spirits, or vinous beverages?
I asked
I
you,
don't know.
is
Yeah,
may
no, I don't
fall
know.
into the category and you
I
can
don't
tell
know.
me.
So-
So it sounds
so-
like it's not clear.
One at a time, please.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. Like I say, I'm not enough of a connoisseur of this to know. The way it would work, I would tell you, is that if this passed, someone would go to the building inspector and say, I fall within that category. It would be up to the building inspector to make that initial determination as to whether or not they did. If the applicant disagreed with that, then it would be up to either the ZBA or if it's a special permit, then obviously it would be the planning board. So if an amendment is warranted, making clear that this should apply to other things, I can't really answer that, but I can tell you the proposed amendment is what is written here, and it reads pretty broadly as to alcoholic beverages.
Okay, thank you.
The microphone to my left.
Elisa Nakash in Holsburg, 6 Betty Lane. Madam Moderator, I appreciate that the handout, Appendix A, is just an excerpt, but I don't see any column titles. So do we have something we can put up on the screen so we're clear on what column that says yes or no is for A, B, C? I don't know what column's what here.
You're looking for the table of uses?
Yep, there's no column titles. Unless I'm misreading the chart.
The page in the handout right before the map has the table of uses.
I understand that, but there's no titles for each of the columns. So I don't know what we're saying yes and no to.
I see.
Thank
I
you.
see your question. So the boxes.
Yep.
N is no, which means it would need a variance.
No, the header to the column isn't present. So I'm wondering if we could just put it, yeah, it's not there either, is it? So I don't know what we're saying yes and no to.
I see.
Yes, the district.
She's looking for the.
Like someone didn't pass high school science, they can get away with not putting. Yeah.
While they're trying to set that up, let's go to the next question. Okay, they're
Okay.
trying to set something up on the screen.
Okay, it would be just as fine if somebody read off what each column was. That would be easy.
They're
enough.
trying to set
Thank-
something up, so. At the center microphone, please.
Oh, thank you. My name is Lakshman Garikpadi. I'm from 11 Russell's Way. Can we add noise pollution too in this? Because where I live, right, there is quite a bit, noise. And I heard there's a new business coming up for dog daycare. And, the noise pollution, right, is aggravating a lot of us too.
I'm going to have town council answer whether or not that would be within the scope.
Thank you through you, Madam Moderator. So what this article is doing is just simply defining certain business uses and then establishing where those uses can go and what the parking requirements of those might be. It doesn't address any of the incidental effects that may occur, such as noise or traffic or things like that. That would be a completely separate process, which is not in front of the meeting this evening.
So there's no scope at all for that?
I'm sorry?
There's no scope to add that type of amendment? No scope, like it has to be a new process?
Correct,
then?
correct. It would be outside of the scope of what this warrant article is attempting to accomplish. It wouldn't have given sufficient notice to people who might have wanted to speak one way or the other about noise pollution.
Thank you. Yeah.
But thank you for your comment. Okay, and the microphone to my right. Before we do that, Alicia, this is the table with the headings at the top. I'm sorry. You good? Okay, great. Microphone to my right.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. Alan Moyer, 69 Forest Road. Article 2, in the definition of a contractor's yard, it indicates that as the last sentence, it says, all materials and equipment shall be screened from public view and abutting properties. We have a number of small businesses and some not so small businesses that already have things that I would consider a contractor's yard. Are we planning to grandfather them in and allow them to continue, or are they going to have to invest in thousands of dollars of fencing?
So that would be something to take up with the building inspector, and I really don't think it has anything to do with this article, but if this article passes and there's something you feel is in violation of it, then that would be something to take up with the building inspector.
So what you're saying is there is no allowance for grandfathered or existing businesses.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. My apologies.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So if there is an existing general service establishment and they are conforming now, they would be protected from this zoning change.
But if they're not conforming, in other words, if their contractor's yard is not screened from public view, are we going to require them to invest in screening it? Yes or no?
So I did not speak clearly enough. When I say conforming, I meant that they were legally in existence according to the zoning in place at the time. So if that is the case, they would be protected from this zoning change, but new ones would have to adhere to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you who found the time and the energy to come here tonight.
At the center microphone.
Emily Teller, 9 Texas Road. I just wanted to thank the planning department and any of the related boards that worked on the text and concept of these two articles for reducing parking in any way possible. I just think that's a great idea, and I hope it continues and will give us more permeable space and more open space and maybe more trees. Thanks.
At the microphone to my left.
Hello, Adrija Sarkar, they, them, 23 Heather Drive. So I was wondering if reducing parking minimums had the stated benefits of permeability, environmentalism and such, why not eliminate parking minimums entirely?
Do you want to answer that, Jeff?
So is the question, why not eliminate parking requirements entirely?
Why not eliminate parking minimums?
So that is that's certainly a possibility. But what we find a lot of applicants look for, they look for certainty. They go through the bylaw, they want to know the expectations. And we currently do provide the minimum requirements. We don't, are you asking to use maximums? Is that?
I am just asking to eliminate minimums.
Well, then that could create a lot of issues during the review process. It would be difficult to require or certain minimum requirements for parking if it isn't called out in the bylaw. It would be difficult to try to enforce. Say if a use came into being and there was inadequate parking, it does make it difficult to try to go through that permit and review process. And a lot of the applicants do want to know what those requirements are up front because that affects the entirety of their planning and their project and their pro forma. So.
Okay, at the microphone to my right.
Arnold Price, 19 Oak Hill Road. Madam Moderator, I'd like to move the question.
All right, is there a second to that? We have a motion to move the question, not subject to debate. This is to move the question, Article 2. It means that if we vote to move it, there will be no further discussion. If you vote against it, that means you want further discussion. Voting is now open. Wait. Yes, it is. If you want to end discussion, you'll vote the green 1A yes button. If you want to continue discussion of Article 2, you'll vote with the red 2B no button. This is a 2/3 vote. Requires 2/3 to pass. Voting is closed. The motion passes 352 to 19. Now we'll move to Article 3. I think we've had sufficient. Oh, no, that's right. That was just to close the discussion. Sorry. See, this is what happens when you get close to 9 o'clock. All right, so now we're going to vote on the motion itself. This is Article 2. If you're going to vote in favor of Article 2, when I say voting's open, you'll press the green 1A button. If you want to vote against it, the red 2B button. This requires a 2/3 majority. Voting is now open. We only moved on to, because we can't vote on it. Only on two. Voting is closed. Article 2 passes. The vote is 318 to 74. Nope, 318 to 56. I tried to see if I could remember it and I couldn't. Okay, now we're gonna move to Article 3. This is the same discussion that we've just had. I don't see any further questions or comments. I think we can move directly to the vote on this. Everybody okay with that? All right. This is also a 2/3 majority required to pass. When I say voting's open, green 1A button for yes, red 2B button for no. Voting is now open. Oh, did we get a second for Article 3? Okay. Yeah, close it. Voting is now closed. Article 3 passes. The vote is 312 to 54. All right. We're now at Article 4. We're in the home stretch. Under Article 4, I have a motion that the town amend our zoning bylaw relative to the use of temporary trailers to increase the permissible time period for the use of a temporary trailer from 6 to 12 months in order to achieve consistency with Mass general laws. Is there a second to that motion? Jeff Morissette to explain further.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As part of Westford's recent zoning bylaw amendments, the Municipal Law Unit of the Attorney General's Office conducted an overall review of our zoning bylaw to check for potential conflicts with the MBTA community's requirements. While they did not find any such conflicts within our bylaw, they did find an inconsistency with state law as it relates to the use of temporary trailers in the instances where a residence has been destroyed by fire or some other catastrophe. In such cases, our bylaw allows for the use of a trailer for up to 6 months, whereas state law allows for up to 12 months. So the simplest fix is to amend our bylaw to replace 6 months with 12 months. Planning Board held a public hearing to review this matter, and they voted on October 7th, 2024, 500 to recommend this amendment to town meeting. The board's written report and recommendation is included in your handout. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions or comments on Article 4? Are you at the microphone, sir? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move right to the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Planning Board report. Mike Bonifant.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Planning Board on the October 7th, 2024 meeting held a public hearing on this very important amendment and voted 5-0 in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Have I forgotten anything else? Okay, I think we can move to the vote now. This is a 2/3 vote. If you're voting in favor of the bylaw, press the green 1A button. Against, press the red 2B button. Voting is now open. You know, I think I thought this meeting was going to be a lot harder, so my brain is just like, okay. Voting is closed. And the article passes 321 to 20. All right, this is our last motion, Article 5. Under Article 5, I have a motion to amend Chapter 51 of the Town of Westford General Bylaw to require that a motion for reconsideration require a 2/3 vote of the meeting in order for any article to be reconsidered, regardless of whether the motion to reconsider is made during the regular town meeting session or in an adjourned session of the same meeting. Is there a second to that motion? So just to explain this a little more, presently, our bylaw says that in order for a motion to reconsideration to pass at the regular session of town meeting, it requires a majority vote. However, if you break for lunch or end your meeting and adjourn the following week, then a motion for reconsideration would require a 2/3 vote. The suggested change is to make it 2/3 in both instances. That's just to clarify the article a little bit. At the microphone in the center.
Bob Carter, 8 Nutting Road. If we're going to change this, could we state this in positive language and eliminate the no's and the accept? And state it so it's a little cleaner to understand and say a vote taken at any town meeting or the adjourned session of any meeting may be reconsidered upon the affirmative vote, and get rid of the negatives just to make it easier to understand. I'd like to make an amendment,
Okay.
a friendly amendment.
All
There's
right.
no reasons for the negatives in here. Let's be positive.
Why don't you just write down your change and bring it up, and we'll put it up on the screen. And in the meantime,
Arnold Price, 19 Oak Hill Road. So Madam Moderator, at the beginning of this meeting, you so eloquently stated that you would not take any motions to reconsider. So why do we need this? If
okay.
you can do that at the beginning of each and every town meeting.
Yeah. So there's a difference between the policy of the moderator and the bylaw. The bylaw is set in stone. It's in our town bylaws, and it's basically a regulation for the town. It's a law for the town. The policy, which is what I've been saying at the meetings, is my policy that I'm imposing on the meeting. So that's the difference, Arnie.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right, Center. No, are you standing at the, sir, are you at the mic? He's not at the microphone. Okay, center microphone.
Emily Teller, 9 Texas Road. I now have 2 questions. My first question is historically, and maybe in the bylaws or Robert's rules, it says that a reconsideration motion must come from the winning side. Is that correct?
No.
Can you explain that?
Town meeting time actually says that it refers to the fact that that idea exists in Robert's rules, but it actually points out that it would be a lion-hearted moderator who would question the person who made the motion and try to ensure that they were in the majority in the first place.
So you would, if you hadn't said you would not entertain motions to reconsider, you would entertain motions to reconsider and not ask that question? About
That's correct.
Okay. Now, my second question is based on what you just said. If it's in the bylaws, can we question your statement that you will accept no reconsideration motions?
You absolutely can always question any statement that I make.
Oh, thank you.
However, I'm
Madam
the ultimate
Moderator.
arbiter of the answer.
Say that again?
I said, however, I am the ultimate arbiter of the answer.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for being so honest. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Is there anyone at this microphone, sir? Yes.
Matt Morris, 29 Hillside Avenue. I would also like to make an amendment.
Can you speak closer to the microphone, sir?
Matthew Morris, 29 Hillside Avenue.
Thank
I
you.
would also like to propose an amendment, but you have one standing on the floor.
Guys, I can't hear. I'm sorry, once more.
I would also like to make an amendment, but you have one standing on the floor. How would you like me to proceed?
We can have a second amendment on the floor, but we can also, if you think it'll clarify, we can do the First Amendment first. It's up to you.
Very good. I will proceed. In my 20 years here in town, not as long as some of you, I have seen a variety of hotly contested issues. These hotly contested issues are the ones that are almost, I would say, exclusively subject to reconsideration votes. And they basically, in my opinion, amount to parliamentary shenanigans, waiting until people go home so you can recall your question that you lost on. Some days I've been the losing side, some days I've been the winning side. I would propose that the bylaw be amended to read, no vote taken at any town meeting or any adjourned session of any meeting shall be reconsidered. Full stop. Thank you.
Town council is advising me to take the First Amendment and then we'll come to yours, okay?
Of course, thank you.
All right. So is this his amendment? All right, so now we have the amendment, the First Amendment made up on the screen. I guess I would just ask, I would just ask town council to confirm that this essentially is saying the same thing, except without using the negatives. Bob? Where is he? Oh, was it your intention to take out the language relative to reconsideration at the regular session? I understand what you're trying to do, but this language that's up here now doesn't have the reconsideration at the regular session. It only says the adjourned session now.
I didn't mean to change that. My intent was to take the no out at the beginning and take out the comma afterwards, because it should say a vote can be reconsidered, right? Under these conditions. And I think this says the same thing, but it says it in a positive format, so it's easier to understand.
But if this is only saying that it may be reconsidered at an adjourned session.
I didn't change that language. It was not my intent.
Okay, I need you to, I can't change it for you. I need you to, so if this is the language you want us to vote on, we'll go ahead. But if not, you need to fix it up here or bring us a written copy. Okay. At the microphone to my left.
David Hudson, Myrtle Avenue. This language is not equivalent to the original motion. And rather than engage in late hour wordsmithing, I'd like to vote this thing down.
Okay. Right. Kathy.
Well, I'll vote to move the question.
All right. So right now, unfortunately, we don't have
Oh, we don't have it? Okay.
we don't have the language to move the question for the amendment.
Okay. This is what I wanted to say. At the beginning of the meeting, you had a great policy for only unless it's a technical or procedural. Can I speak to that now? Okay.
Sorry, Kathy.
That was your policy. On this Article 5, it makes it so that we need 2/3 to reconsider. It's much less restrictive if we have it, I just think it's better if we just have it unless technical or procedural. And so I'm recommending that it be that way or vote it down.
Okay. So again, we need to determine if that's in the scope.
Why do we need
Thank you. Through you,
to
Madam
put this
Moderator.
2/3 in?
See,
The-
the change that's being, I'm sorry, Greg. The change that's being proposed here is to make the reconsideration motion at the original session of the town meeting from a majority vote to a 2/3 vote. That's the change that this is making. So it's not really it's not changing it to the policy I've been imposing at all. It's just changing the amount of the vote that it takes at the original session. It's changing it from a majority to a 2/3. Okay. At the microphone to my right.
Bill Bellotta, 52 Nutting Road. Sorry, there's been a lot of information thrown out, but if we vote no, then technically your policy doesn't have to stand and we could ask for reconsideration on a simple majority, correct?
If you vote no.
If we vote no.
Reconsideration would only require a simple majority at the original meeting at which the motion was passed that's being reconsidered.
And if we vote yes, it's a 2/3 majority.
Correct.
And as the gentleman earlier said, that's when shenanigans are going to happen because a ton of people have left. So can I put up a reconsider for the first article? I'm not going to. I'm just saying, could I do that right now?
Well, right now, if you were to do that, I would say, as a result of my policy, that I won't accept that because I only accept motions to reconsider for technical or procedural errors.
Right, but you don't have to say, I'm not saying anything against you, but you don't have to say that every time. In the spring one, you don't have to say that, or if you're,
a future moderator
a future
may have a
moderator can
different.
change it. Right, so your policy seems to make sense, and I think, I forget where the gentleman went, who said no consideration unless it's, we should just add unless it's technical, that gentleman right there, unless it's a technical or procedural reason. And that's it. Because shenanigans are going to happen. That's the bottom line, right? There's backdoor dealings. Okay, we'll wait for everybody to leave. And at the end, okay, we got it. Let's try to put the vote through again. So. And a lot of people left, and this might be the most important thing we vote on tonight.
All right. All right, we have the amendment.
Madam Moderator.
One moment, please. Please give me a moment. All right, thank you. This is the amendment we're voting on. It's essentially just changed. Is there a second to this amendment? All right. It's only changing, one second, Eric. It's only changing the verbiage of the motion to have it characterized in a positive language as opposed to negative language. All right. So now we're discussing the amendment. Eric, do you have something to say about the amendment?
A motion to adjourn is always in order, and I think that's the best way to put this whole confused issue to bed for the night and come back to it at a later time.
I just want to point out, if we adjourn right now, we're back here next Monday for this one remaining article.
That being said, I will withdraw. the
Okay.
motion.
Thank you. Sir, to my left on the amendment only.
Yes, Greg Fong, 3 Quarry Hill Road. I oppose the amendment on 2 grounds. One is that getting the wording for these things right is difficult. The first attempt broke it. The wording change was unnecessary. It was not trying to change the sense of the motion, just to change the wording. So I oppose it on that ground. And the second is the original wording of the motion was that the motions will not be reconsidered unless. The default is that we do not reconsider motions, and this flips that and makes it sort of more permissive. Legally it's the same, but I think the preference should be that we don't reconsider motions.
Thank you. Bob, town council is saying you need to write your entire motion down. Exactly what you want this to say. Thank you. Okay, so now we have a second amendment. Okay, so sir, if I read this correctly, your amendment says no vote taken at any town meeting or any adjourned session of any meeting shall be reconsidered except for technical or procedural inconsistencies. Is that correct? Subject to a 2/3 majority. You need to write that in here. Yeah, tell me about it. Council, do you want to address that? All right. After consultation with council, I believe this is beyond the scope.
Good, good.
Now, folks, this is my policy. So if I could do it, I would. But there are reasons why this needs to be something that the town was notified of before we made the change. We would be making what has been my policy a permanent bylaw, not just for me and this meeting, but for every meeting from here on out. So for that reason, we have to be careful about ensuring that the voters have all been notified that that's what we're doing before voting on it. So it's beyond the scope. We're back to the original article. Is there any further discussion? Dennis?
Yeah, Dennis Galvin, Concord Road. I urge that you pass the motion as it was written with the 2/3 vote. Those folks who are concerned about the shenanigans, so to speak, after many years of watching town meeting, it's largely, I'd say, majority vote that brings that back. Eliminating the majority vote really reduces the possibility of that happening. And I think that was the intent of this in the first place. So I think that, if you go with a 2/3 vote, it makes it very difficult to recall a particular motion. But you always want to keep the recall possibility because we're human and we can make a mistake and we don't want to be locked into a mistake. So that's why.
Thank you, Dennis. Denali?
Denali Delmar, 8 Dunstable Road, move the question.
I was up
All
here.
right, we have a
before-
motion
Excuse
to move
me,
the
point
question.
of
Is
order.
there?
I
is-
was up here before Denali was, and I would like my chance.
I'm sorry, we have a motion to move the question. It takes precedence over everything else. There's no discretion on that.
I had okay, point of clarification.
What is your point of clarification?
My point of clarification is, does this amendment affect, this change to the bylaws affect just the town meeting you're at or all town meetings moving forward?
All town meetings moving forward. It would be a change to our general bylaws.
I'm sorry, I think you misunderstand it. If we voted on something, we left the building, next town meeting, could we come back and vote on it again?
You can't do that anyway. You'd have to, you can only reconsider at the same session or an adjourned session. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the vote. Oh yeah, we're moving the question. So is there a second to the motion to move the question? All right. All in favor of terminating debate and moving the question, when I say the vote is open, press your green 1A button. If you're not in favor and you want more debate, press the red 2B button. Voting is open. You're just voting whether or not to move the question. Requires a 2/3 majority. Voting is closed. The motion to terminate debate and move the question passes 298 to 289 to 10. All right, so we're now voting on the underlying motion, which is Article 5. If you are in favor of Article 5, please vote with the green 1A button. If you're opposed, use the red 2B button. Voting is now open. Okay. Voting is closed. The motion passes 267 to 30. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the business of the 2024 special town meeting. Thank you for your help. What? Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Thank you for your help. Please feel free to contact me on the town website if you have any questions or suggestions about improving this process. Please remember to put your clickers in the boxes by the door. May I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? Great. See you next time. Thank you. Thanks for your consideration.